4 true and terrifying urban legends from around the world. Urban legends aren't real, at least that's what we've been taught. They're nothing more than stories told around the campfire for entertainment, but with any good story, there's usually a hint of truth in them somewhere, or maybe, as in these cases, a whole lot of it. These are 4 true and terrifying urban legends from around the world. Number 4. La Llorona. The story of La Llorona has been told in New Mexico so many times that it has instilled a paralyzing fear in the children that grew up there. As it goes, there was once a young, beautiful woman named Maria. Although poor, she and her family were known all around the rural village because of her beauty. She declined many of the local suitors, but one day a wealthy merchant passed by and was enchanted with her. She too fell in love with him. But after she bore him twins, things began to change. Her husband grew distant and ended up frequently traveling, leaving Maria alone with the children. Seldom did he return, and when he did, it was only to visit the kids. As a result, Maria soon began feeling resentment towards her children. One night, while her and the kids were strolling by the riverside, she saw her husband in a carriage with an elegant young lady beside him. He stopped the carriage, spoke with the children, but completely ignored Maria before driving away. Feeling hurt, Maria turned her rage to her children and threw them in the river. As they disappeared under the murky waters, it was only then that she had realized what she had done. She desperately ran down to the bank to save them, but it was too late. Inconsolable, she refused to eat and would be seen walking the streets wailing and screaming for her children. She wandered the banks endlessly, crying and hoping that she would find them. Maria grew thinner, looking like a walking skeleton despite being a young woman. In the end, she died by the riverbanks from grief, never finding her children. Not long after her death, many of those living in the village claimed to have witnessed her apparition, and soon she became known as the Weeping Woman, or La Llorona. The weeping and wailing, as well as her gaunt figure, clad in a white, torn, and soiled gown, became a haunting presence on the banks of the Santa Fe River. Townsfolk began saying that whoever hears her weeping and wailing should run in the other direction, for even just the sound of it will bring misery and misfortune. Many people have professed to seeing her figure floating around the shorelines of the river after dark. In some stories, she is nothing but an apparition, but in others, it's said that she is looking to snatch children away, driving them to their deaths in replacement for the ones that she lost. But is there anything to signify La Llorona might have a real-life counterpart? While the actual story of where the legend comes from remains unknown, some point to a folktale based on a real-life person, a woman named La Malinche. She was a Mexican from the Naha tribe who is said to have played a prominent role in the Spanish conquest during the Aztec Empire. She was the interpreter, intermediary, and advisor for the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez. Later on, La Malinche bore Cortez's first son Martin, considered to be among the first mestizos to be born. In the end, La Malinche was abandoned by Cortez in favor of a Spanish lady. It's believed it was her Aztec pride that drove her to seek vengeance, but in what form, no one can confirm for sure. It's believed La Malinche died sometime in 1551. No one knows why or how she died, but the figure of La Llorona is often traced back to her. Number 3. Alice killings. One of the most disturbing urban legends that springs up are those involving death and murder. One such legend, or real story, depending on which one you believe, comes from Japan. The story goes that from between 1999 to 2005, Japan was hit by a wave of mysterious serial killings. Each murder was different, save for one similarity. All 5 bore the killer's literal calling card, a piece of a playing card with the name Alice written down in the victim's blood. It started with the death of 29-year-old Sasaki Megumi. Described as a headstrong woman with a temper, she was a restaurant owner known for her great cooking skills. Actively social, she often went and enjoyed parties. One night after one of them, she was seen stumbling home from a friend's house. Although her home was nearby, People offered her a ride after seeing she was too drunk, but she shrugged it off and insisted on walking. The following morning, a couple were hiking in the woods just a mile from Megumi's home when they saw blood on the ground near an unused path. The couple followed the blood trail until they finally looked up and saw Megumi's body. It was cut in several pieces and parts of it hung on various branches. Terrified at the sight, the couple called police. It was the authorities who ultimately discovered a crammed Jack of Spades playing card inside her mouth with the word Alice written on it. No fingerprints or DNA were ever found. The next death was of a young man named Yamane Akio. A singer for a local band, his friends described him as kind-hearted. He was abducted from his apartment on February 11, 2001. That night his girlfriend came to visit him, but the apartment was empty. After days of not seeing him, she reported him missing. When police checked the security cameras, they saw a hooded figure enter the side door of the apartment. The same hooded figure later left with a large garbage bag that looked odd. No one ever saw the man, but it's believed he was the killer. Then, a week after that, a local bar owner opened his establishment to find a horrifying sight. Akio's dead body was slumped on the table and his vocal cords and throat had been ripped out. He also had a gunshot wound to the head. Clutched in his hand was a King of Diamonds card with the name Alice together with his ripped out vocal cords. But perhaps the most brutally killed was that of Kai Sakura. The young teen was taken just a week after graduating from high school. Despite the whole town looking for her, she was nowhere to be found. But 2 days later, someone discovered a shallow grave marked by a stick. On the stick was a Queen of Clubs playing card scribbled with the word Alice once again. Uncovering the grave, police discovered the teen's body was horribly mutilated. Her eyes had been gouged, her mouth carved open, and her skin flayed. There was a crown sewn to her head, likely when she was alive, but there were no signs of sexual assault. Curiously, strange handwritten notes of random phrases were left behind. Some read, "Death is a distorted dream," and "She will forever rule." But a match to this handwriting was never found. The final victims of the Alice killings were siblings Hiyoto and Hina Oshiro. The children were incredibly close. Hina was the stubborn older sister to Hiyoto's intelligent demeanor. They were found dead inside their home and in their beds on April 4, 2005. The bedroom window was open and police believe the killer snuck inside while they slept and injected them with a lethal dose of drugs. Each child was found holding half of an Ace of Hearts card with the word Alice on it. A smudged footprint was found at the scene, but this was too badly degraded to be used as a lead. Soon after the deaths of the Oshiros, a homeless man named Suzuki Yuto was arrested. Yuto had mental problems and claimed he couldn't remember where he was during the murders. Strong evidence was against him since he was captured wearing Yamane Akio's coat with some blood smears belonging to the previous victim on it. Oddly, Suzuki began raving about a demon black man with no face giving him the coat. Later on he was released though, since witnesses corroborated he had been in a homeless shelter 5 miles away during the night of Sakura's murder. The police never solved the Alice killings, and it's said that it remains to be one of the most curious unsolved murders in Japanese law enforcement. However, many express doubt the killings are even real. You can research them on your own, but it's hard to decide one way or another whether or not these murders happened. Number 2. Le Loyon. Also known as the Ghost of Malls, Le Loyon is the story of a mysterious humanoid figure that roamed around the woodlands in the Swiss town of Malls. Those who saw the figure described him as being tall and dressed in a military-style gimp suit with a gas mask covering its head. Many people question whether this apparition should be treated as a cryptid or simply an urban legend. The sighting started several decades ago in the town of Malls. Those living in the area reported seeing a strange figure taking daily walks in the forest wearing a military cloak and gas mask. The figure was so consistently seen that the locals dubbed him as Le Loyon. For years, the mysterious thing was seen walking around the same woods every day, stalking the town from a distance. Police tried unsuccessfully several times to find him so they could speak to him about his getup because so many people found it threatening. Although Le Loyon's existence has been mentioned for decades, it was always considered a legend. That is, until a photograph of the figure was finally captured by an amateur photographer. The man said he came across the figure walking several dozen meters away from him. He snapped the photo from behind as the person walked away. The photographer described him or her as being at least 6 feet tall. Another local resident, Marianne Declue, said her encounter with Le Loyon was unexpected and unpleasant. Although she made it clear the figure didn't seem to express any ill intent, it was still unsettling for her. Her description was similar to that of other witnesses. Many locals have avoided the forest altogether now, especially when they're alone, particularly the women. By the end of 2013, a French website called Le Matin posted a supposed suicide note discovered in the mall's forest, along with Le Loyon's signature garb. The note indicated that because of the increased scrutiny behind the individual, they decided suicide was a more preferential treatment. Towards the closing portion of the note, it mentioned the story of 19th century Austrian author Sacher Masoch, from where we obtained the word sadomasochism. Sacher had began a controversial relationship with Baroness Fanny Pister. Within that relationship, they agreed he would be compelled to do anything she wanted him to do, even signing a contract to that effect. Pister herself would wear a fur coat anytime she felt like being cruel, hence the term sadomasochism was created. Perhaps this provides a clue as to the true nature and intent of Le Loyon. It's possible he or she was wearing the garb as a passive, sadomasochist response to something or someone. We can only speculate, but the fact is we will never know. No remains were ever found with the suicide note, and the remaining outfit gave no clues as to who or what Le Loyon might be. Since then, however, the sightings have stopped. Number 1. The Bunny Man. Soon after the Civil War ended, Fairfax County, Virginia became a hub for insane asylums. Countless buildings were erected to house the mentally ill and the unwanted. The problem was, the locals didn't want to live near them, and as a result, public outrage over these institutions were high, and soon many were shut down. The patients were then shuffled to various areas, but as the transfers happened in 1904, there were some patients who managed to escape. Most were caught except for 2 people, Marcus Loster and Douglas Griffin. The 2 men were considered dangerous and delusional characters, so authorities launched a manhunt to make sure they were captured and brought back as soon as possible. Authorities found their trail by following a set of dead and mutilated bunnies. It led them straight into the woods and to a tunnel bridge. Inside they found Marcus hanging by the tunnel entrance. A note attached to his foot said, "You'll never find me no matter how hard you try." It was signed by the Bunny Man. Since then, the same tunnel has been dubbed as the Bunny Man Bridge. According to legend, if anyone walks all the way through the tunnel at midnight, the Bunny Man will grab them and hang them from the entrance of the bridge. While you might not believe that, oddly, several strange deaths have been tied to the tunnel since. A young man from Clifton, Virginia, who traveled on the bridge, later went on to kill his parents. He dragged their bodies into the woods and hanged them on the bridge. Afterwards, he killed himself. In 1943, 6 teenagers wandered to the bridge on Halloween night, but in the end, all 6 were discovered dead and hanging from the bridge with a note that said, "You'll never catch the Bunny Man." The same thing happened in 1976 with 3 teenagers as the casualties. A more sinister spin to the legend turned out to be stories and reports of people seeing an actual man wearing a bunny costume and holding a hatchet. In October of 1970, a U.S. Air Force cadet and his girlfriend reported being attacked by a man wearing a bunny costume when a hatchet was thrown through their car window. Although they managed to take a good look at the man, they couldn't fully describe him or tell exactly what his race was. The man shouted for them to leave because they were trespassing. A second sighting was also reported. This time the witness described the Bunny Man as a young male in his 20s, wearing a bunny costume with a large axe, screaming that they were trespassing and that if they did come back, he would chop off their heads. After the first report, the Fairfax County Police opened an investigation, compiling reports by multiple people stating that they've also spotted a Bunny Man. More than 50 reports have been recorded so far. So there were 4 true and terrifying urban legends from around the world. Today, these urban legends are still passed from one generation to the next, but it's best to know that sometimes what seems like folk tales and legends might have a sinister truth lurking at its core. We have new videos coming out every Wednesday and Saturday, so please remember to subscribe to our channel because you won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.